My father left his inheritance to my stepmother, not to me. I stood in the cold room, holding the will my father had written before he passed away. The words felt like a knife deep in my heart. I had always thought I was the sole heir, the one with the right to inherit the family fortune. But now, all I knew was a massive lie. I couldn't believe my eyes. My stepmother, the one I had always suspected, was now the one receiving the majority of my father's estate. A small smile appeared on my face. It had been a long time since I felt this calm, but now I couldn't let this betrayal slide so easily. Everything had been prepared in advance, I just needed a trace to begin. The confusion, the tension, and the unanswered questions had weighed heavily on me for so long. But now, everything was clear. The truth had to be exposed, and I would be the one to do it. The cold wind whipped through the cracks in the old mansion as I walked down the hallway, the familiar smell of polished wood and dust filling my nostrils. I had returned to this house after years of being away, and though it looked the same, it felt entirely different. The place where I grew up, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like a haunted house, echoing only the emptiness left behind by my father's absence. My mind kept drifting back to the will. That damned will. I still couldn't shake the disbelief that had gripped me the moment I read it. It wasn't just the fact that my father had left everything to my stepmother. No, it was the realization that he had lied to me all these years. For decades, I had believed that I was his one true heir, the one he cherished, the one he trusted to carry on the legacy of the Brooks family. But now, I felt like a fool. I had always known that my stepmother, Claire, was different from the others. She wasn't like the women my father had been with before, those fleeting relationships that never seemed to last. Claire was different. She had power. She had a way of controlling him, bending him to her will. And now, she had everything, his wealth, his property, and his influence. What did I have? Nothing but the betrayal of a father who had promised me the world, only to give it all away to someone who didn't even belong. I paced back and forth in the living room, trying to keep my emotions in check. The silence in the house was suffocating. It was strange, but I felt an odd sense of calm, too. Maybe it was because I knew what had to be done next. I wasn't going to let Claire take everything from me, not without a fight. The thought of her sitting there, smug and self-assured, made my blood boil. Claire had been married to my father for nearly 20 years, and I had always been the outsider, the one who didn't fit in with their perfect little family. But I had always believed that, despite everything, I still had my rightful place in the Brooks legacy. I sat down at the grand piano in the corner of the room and ran my fingers lightly over the keys, the sound echoing in the stillness. The music had always been my escape, my way of calming my racing thoughts. But today, it wasn't enough. No amount of music could erase the sting of what I had learned. I had always known there were secrets hidden beneath the surface, but now they were coming to light. And the more I thought about it, the more certain I became, I had to uncover the truth. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I wasn't going to sit here and wallow in my pain. I had a plan, and I was going to see it through. The first step was simple. I needed to confront Claire. But how? How could I approach her when I knew she was the one behind all of this? She had her claws in every corner of my father's life, and I had no doubt that she would fight back with everything she had. She was no fool, and I had to be careful. If I pushed too hard, she might shut me out entirely, and that would leave me with nothing. Still, I had no choice. The betrayal I had experienced was too much to ignore. My father, the man who had been my protector, had given me a false sense of security, and now I had to pick up the pieces of my broken trust. I would find the truth, no matter how difficult or dangerous the journey might be. I went to the desk in the study, my fingers brushing the cold wood as I pulled open the drawer. Inside, I found a collection of old papers, letters, photos, documents, things I had never bothered to look at before. Maybe now they would hold the answers I was searching for. Maybe now they would provide the clues I needed to unravel the mystery that had plagued me for so long. My eyes landed on a photograph of my father and Claire, taken years ago at a family gathering. They were standing close together, their hands entwined, both of them smiling. It was a picture-perfect moment, a moment that now felt like a lie. How could I have been so blind? How could I have believed that my father, the man I looked up to, the man I had trusted with my life, could betray me like this? The anger surged within me again, but I quickly tamped it down. No, I couldn't afford to be emotional now. I needed to think clearly. I needed to be methodical. I glanced down at the pile of papers in front of me and began to sift through them. One by one, I flipped through the documents, looking for anything that could give me a hint about what my father and Claire had been involved in. It didn't take long before I found something, a letter written by my father that seemed to be addressed to Claire. The words on the page sent a chill down my spine. It was a love letter, filled with promises and declarations of affection. But it wasn't just the content of the letter that caught my attention. It was the date. This letter had been written just days before my father's death. I swallowed hard. Could this letter be the key? Was this the moment that had sealed my fate? I couldn't be sure, but I knew one thing: I needed to dig deeper. With the letter in hand, I closed the drawer and turned toward the door. The air outside felt heavy with tension, like a storm was about to break. But no matter what happened next, I was determined to find the truth. I would expose the lies, and I would reclaim what was rightfully mine. I stepped out of the study and into the cold Chicago night, my heart racing. The journey ahead would not be easy, but I had no choice. I had to uncover the secrets my father had left behind. And when I did, I would make sure that Claire paid for everything she had taken from me. The wind howled through the streets of Chicago, a stark contrast to the silence that had engulfed the Brooks family home. I stood outside in the cold night, my breath misting in front of me as I clutched the letter tightly in my hand. The weight of it felt heavier than any material possession I had ever owned. This letter, written by my father, was my first real clue in the puzzle that had torn apart my family. As I walked down the empty sidewalk, I replayed the contents of the letter in my mind. It was obvious that my father had been in love with Claire, but there was something else hidden between the lines, something that made my skin crawl. The language was filled with such deep affection, but it was also marked by a sense of obligation. For the family, my father wrote, for what we've built together. What had he meant by that? Was he trying to protect her? Or was this a deeper commitment, one that extended beyond love and into the dark realm of secrets? I didn't know, but I had a feeling that the answers were buried somewhere deep within the walls of this house. Somewhere that Claire didn't want me to find. I needed to speak with her. Confront her, yes, but I also needed to observe, to understand her behavior. For years, I had watched Claire from the sidelines, never fully trusting her, but never having the proof I needed to accuse her of anything. Now, I realized how much of a mistake that had been. I should have been more suspicious. I should have dug deeper long before this. The problem, however, was that Claire was a master manipulator. She knew how to weave a perfect facade, and over the years, she had managed to win over everyone in the family, even my father. I was the outsider, the one who never truly fit in. My father had tried to convince me otherwise, but deep down, I always knew I didn't belong in the life they had built. I reached for my phone and called my best friend, Ava. She had always been the one person I could trust, and I needed someone on my side now more than ever. "Hey, Em," Ava answered, her voice groggy from sleep. "What's going on?" "I need your help," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "I found something big. I think my dad was keeping secrets from me, and now Claire's got everything. She's the one who inherits everything, not me." Ava was silent for a moment. "What do you mean, everything?" "I mean the house, the money, the businesses. Everything," I said, feeling the weight of my words. "And I have no idea why. But I'm going to find out. I'm going to get to the bottom of this." "I'm in," Ava replied immediately. "What do you need me to do?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'm going to start by talking to Claire. I need to find out what's really going on. I'll need you to back me up just in case things get complicated." "Count on me," she said. "But be careful, Emily. Claire's dangerous. She's been controlling everything for years. You can't just walk in there and expect answers." "I know," I replied, my determination hardening. "But it's my only option. If I don't find out the truth, I'll lose everything." The phone call ended, and I stood there for a few moments, staring at the dim lights of the house ahead. I could almost feel Claire watching me, waiting for me to make my move. She knew I would come after her eventually, she had to, but I couldn't let her get the upper hand, not this time. I walked back into the house, my footsteps heavy against the polished wood floors. It felt like everything had changed overnight. The house I had once called home now felt alien, like it was hiding something from me. I made my way to the study, where I had found the letter earlier, and started searching through more of my father's personal belongings. There had to be something else, something more than just that letter. I rifled through the drawers, opening each file and folder carefully. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages, hoping for a clue that would connect the dots. The old papers smelled of dust and decay, the remnants of a life that had already slipped away. But nothing jumped out at me, not at first. Then, near the back of one drawer, I found a manila envelope marked with the words, "For Emily, to be opened when you're ready." My heart skipped a beat. I ripped open the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, I found more letters, written by my father, this time to me. My eyes scanned the first one. "My dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here, and I am sorry for all the things I couldn't say in person. There are things you need to understand, things I wish I had explained to you before it was too late." I stopped reading, the words still echoing in my mind. Was this it? The key to understanding my father's motives? Or was it just another attempt to explain the unexplainable? I kept reading. "There are things about Claire I need you to know. Her past is more complicated than you realize, and her influence over me has grown stronger over the years. I don't want to excuse my decisions, but I need you to understand that she is not who she seems." My breath caught in my throat. My father had known. He had known about Claire's manipulations, and yet he had still left her everything. Tears stung my eyes, but I fought them back. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I had to use this letter to my advantage, to confront Claire with the truth about herself. I grabbed my coat and headed toward the door. There was no turning back now. I would confront Claire, and I would make her pay for everything she had stolen from me, from my father, from my family, and from me. The city of Chicago never seemed to sleep, even in the dead of night. The glowing streetlights flickered as I drove through the empty streets, my mind racing with thoughts of the confrontation that lay ahead. I had the letter from my father in my pocket, a burning reminder of everything I had lost, everything Claire had taken from me. My pulse quickened as I approached the Brooks estate. The mansion loomed before me, casting long shadows over the lawn, its windows dark and still, as if it too was holding its breath. It felt like a battleground, my battleground. The house that had once been a place of warmth now seemed like a cold fortress, hiding the secrets of a man I had trusted completely. I parked in front of the grand entrance and took a deep breath. Tonight would change everything. I would confront Claire. I would demand the truth, and no matter how hard she tried to hide it, I would tear down the walls of deceit she had so carefully constructed. My steps were deliberate as I approached the front door. I had prepared myself for this moment, mentally rehearsing every word I would say, but nothing could have prepared me for the cold, calculating look Claire would give me when she opened the door. "Emily," Claire's voice was smooth, almost too smooth. She was standing in the doorway, her expression calm but unreadable, as though she had been waiting for me all along. "I wasn't expecting you." I could see the faintest glint of surprise in her eyes, but it was quickly masked by her usual air of elegance. She was the picture of composure, as if nothing in the world could ever shake her. But I knew better. She was nervous. She had to be. I had something she didn't expect. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the anger that was boiling beneath the surface. Claire tilted her head slightly, studying me for a moment, then stepped aside to let me in. "Of course," she said, her voice dripping with false politeness. "Come in, Emily. We have much to discuss, I'm sure." I walked past her into the foyer, my senses heightened. The house was as immaculate as ever, the chandeliers sparkling in the dim light. But everything felt wrong. The polished floors, the expensive artwork, the perfect furniture, it all felt like a facade, a display for the world to admire. And yet, behind that facade, secrets were festering, lies were being woven, and I had every intention of pulling them apart. We walked into the living room, where Claire motioned for me to sit. She took a seat across from me, the air between us thick with tension. "Why are you here, Emily?" Claire asked, her voice softer now, almost coaxing. "If this is about your inheritance, I think you already know the answer." I stared at her, refusing to let her see the frustration building inside me. "I know you've been manipulating everything," I said, my voice low but firm. "You've taken everything from me, my father's trust, his love, and now the inheritance that should have been mine." Claire's lips curled into a tight smile, her eyes flashing with a mixture of pity and amusement. "You really think your father left everything to you, don't you?" she asked, her tone condescending. "Poor Emily, you've always been so naive. I clenched my fists, my anger threatening to boil over. What have you done to him, Claire? How did you twist his mind to get him to leave everything to you? I demanded. You knew I was his daughter. You knew he loved me. Yet you took everything from me. Claire's gaze hardened, and for the first time since I'd walked in, I saw a flicker of something darker in her eyes. She stood up slowly, her posture impeccable, as if she were preparing for a battle she had already won. You think I did this for money? She asked, her voice icy. I did this for us, for our future. Your father and I built a life together, a life that you never understood. You were always the outsider. He was mine, Emily, and I was his. You think just because you're his daughter, you have some special claim to everything he worked for. I stood up abruptly, unable to stay seated any longer. You manipulated him, Claire. You didn't build anything together, you took from him. And you took from me. You think I didn't notice how you changed him over the years, how you twisted him into someone I didn't recognize. My voice was shaking with rage now, but I couldn't stop myself. This house, the money, the business, it was never meant to be yours. It was meant to be mine. Claire stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she looked me over. You think I don't know that? You think I don't know how hard it's been for you, watching me take what you thought was yours? But you're wrong, Emily. You never knew the whole story. You never knew what your father really wanted. He left me everything because he knew that I would protect this family when he was gone. He trusted me. Her words were poison, each one designed to cut deep. But I wasn't backing down. If he really trusted you, why did he write me a letter before he died? I pulled the letter from my pocket and slammed it down on the coffee table. Why did he tell me everything you've been hiding? Why did he warn me about you? Claire's face went white at the mention of the letter. For a moment, I saw the mask crack, but she quickly recovered, her expression turning cold once more. That letter doesn't matter, Emily, Claire said, her voice shaking with barely contained fury. Your father was confused in his last days. He didn't know what he was doing. He made a mistake, and I was there to clean up his mess. Everything he left me, I earned it. I shook my head, my resolve hardening. I'm not going to let you get away with this, I said. I'm going to expose everything. I'm going to make sure everyone knows who you really are. Claire's eyes narrowed dangerously, and for the first time, I saw the woman behind the facade. You think you can take me down, Emily? You think you can just waltz in here and undo everything I've built? Her voice dropped to a low, menacing whisper. You'll regret this. You have no idea what you're up against. I stood my ground, refusing to back down. Try me. The tension in the room was palpable, the weight of our words hanging heavy in the air. I had no idea what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The tension in the room hung thick, suffocating us both. Claire's eyes bore into me, her every word dripping with venom, but I wasn't afraid. I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to let her win, not without a fight. She might have had my father in her grasp, but she wouldn't take my future, not without a reckoning. Claire finally broke the silence, her voice cool and calculated. You've made a grave mistake, Emily. This house, this inheritance, none of it belongs to you anymore. You're wasting your time, and if you think you can expose me, you're sorely mistaken. There are things you don't know, things you'll never understand. I stepped closer to her, my voice steady. Then tell me everything, Claire. Tell me about the things you've done behind closed doors, because I'm done pretending I don't know what's going on. Her gaze flickered with something unreadable, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of doubt. But then, as quickly as it came, it was gone, replaced by the cold, unyielding mask she wore so well. You have no idea, Emily, she said, her voice low and dangerous. You think you're going to waltz in here and turn the tables? You think you're going to take away everything I've worked for? You don't know what you're dealing with. Claire's lips curled into a bitter smile. Do you think you're the first to challenge me? Do you think you're the first to try and expose me? She took a step back, her voice growing colder with each word. I've dealt with people like you before, Emily. People who think they can outsmart me, but you can't, you won't. I have too much on the line, and if you push me too far, you'll regret it. For a split second, her calm exterior faltered, her hand twitched, as if she wanted to grab something, anything, to throw at me. I could see it now, the cracks in her carefully crafted persona. Claire was hiding something, and I was going to make her expose it. I took a deep breath, then calmly slid the letter across the table toward her. You think my father was confused? You think his last words to me were meaningless? Here, Claire, here's the truth. I tapped the letter with my finger. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew exactly what you were doing to him, to us. For a long moment, Claire just stared at the letter, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. She had been expecting a confrontation, yes, but this was different. The power dynamic had shifted. The tables had turned. With a sharp inhale, she snapped the letter from the table, crumpling it in her hands, her knuckles turning white with the force. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed. "This letter doesn't mean a damn thing. You don't know what you're getting into." I didn't back down. "Tell me the truth, Claire, I know there's more. You've been controlling everything, pulling strings behind the scenes. The money, the businesses, the will, it's all connected. What is it that you're hiding?" For a moment, there was silence. Claire's breath was shallow, her hands shaking as she slowly stood up from the table. She began pacing, muttering to herself, as if she were trying to steady herself. I could see the struggle in her. This was no longer about the inheritance. This was about something much deeper, something she didn't want me to know. Finally, she stopped pacing and turned to face me. Her expression was no longer the confident, polished mask she had worn for so many years. It was raw, vulnerable, and for the first time I saw a flicker of real fear in her eyes. "You want to know the truth, Emily?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "The truth is, your father wasn't just mine, he was ours. We were building something together, something you could never understand. But he started to pull away. He started to see the cracks in our perfect life. He knew I had secrets, but I kept him close. I kept him here in this house, in this family. And when he started to question me, I had to act. I couldn't let him destroy everything we built." I watched her carefully, my heart pounding in my chest. Every word she said was calculated, measured. She was giving me pieces of the truth, but not enough to expose everything. "Stop lying," I said, cutting through the chaos of her confession. "What did you do to him, Claire? What did you do to make him leave everything to you, to betray me?" Claire's eyes flickered with something darker, a brief flash of the monster beneath the surface. "You think I'm the villain here?" she asked, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You think I'm the one who betrayed you? No, Emily, I did what I had to do. Your father wasn't the man you thought he was. He was weak. He needed me, and I gave him what he needed. But he wasn't strong enough to handle the truth." I stared at her, processing her words, trying to make sense of the twisted reality she was painting. My father had been weak. Claire had controlled him, manipulated him, and now she was trying to rewrite history. But I wouldn't let her. I had to stop her, no matter what. "You don't get to rewrite history, Claire," I said, my voice cold. "You don't get to destroy everything my father built and walk away unscathed. I will make sure the truth comes out." For the first time, I saw Claire hesitate. The walls around her began to crack, just slightly. But she quickly regained her composure, her eyes narrowing with renewed fury. "You think you can take me down, Emily? You think you can beat me at my own game?" she asked, her voice a low, venomous whisper. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. This is far from over." Her threat hung in the air like a promise of something much darker, something I couldn't yet fully comprehend. But one thing was clear. I had started a dangerous game, and Claire wasn't going down without a fight. But neither was I. This wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. This was about exposing the truth, and I would stop at nothing to uncover it, even if it meant taking on the darkest side of the woman who had deceived us all. The hours dragged on, the silence between Claire and me only broken by the occasional rustle of paper or the soft hum of the grand clock ticking in the corner of the room. I was still reeling from what she had said. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about power, manipulation, and the lies Claire had woven over the years to keep everything under her control. My father had been a man of integrity, but in the end, Claire had worn him down, twisted his thoughts, and made him depend on her. I couldn't let her win. I wouldn't let her. Claire stood by the fireplace, her back turned to me as she stared into the flames. For a long moment, I wondered if I had pushed her too far, if perhaps I had underestimated just how deep her web of deceit had gone. She was dangerous, yes, but I wasn't the same naive girl I had been when I first walked into this house. I had the truth on my side. And now, it was a matter of finding a way to expose everything she had hidden. I stood up, my mind racing, thoughts of the will, the letters, and the dark secrets that Claire had buried coming together like pieces of a puzzle. There was something she wasn't telling me, something deeper than the lies she'd already confessed. I knew I had to dig further, even if it meant getting my hands dirty. "Claire," I said, breaking the silence, my voice steady but firm. You haven't told me everything. She didn't turn to face me, but I saw her fingers curl around the back of a chair, her knuckles white. I've told you enough, she said quietly, her voice sharp with restraint. More than you deserve. No, I pressed, stepping forward. You haven't. What exactly did you mean when you said my father wasn't strong enough to handle the truth? What was the truth, Claire? Her body stiffened at the question, but she didn't turn around. There was a moment of hesitation before she spoke again, her voice low. Your father was a man with many weaknesses, Emily. You never saw it, but I did. He was proud, yes, but he was also deeply flawed. I was the one who kept him grounded. I was the one who kept everything together. And when he started questioning everything we had, our life, our future, he became a liability. He became dangerous. I stepped closer, the anger inside me growing with each word. So, you manipulated him into thinking he needed you, and you pushed him to the edge until he couldn't see the truth anymore. You broke him, Claire. And now, you think you can just walk away with everything. Her shoulders sagged slightly, and she finally turned to face me, her eyes dark and calculating. You think I did it for the money? You think I care about some family fortune? No, I did it because I loved your father. And I did it because I knew he would fall apart without me. I did it to protect everything we built. Protect, I repeated, disbelief rising in my throat. You destroyed him, Claire. You didn't protect him, you used him. She flinched, the flicker of vulnerability in her eyes quickly buried under the familiar mask of control. You don't understand, she said quietly. You weren't here. You don't know how hard it was. Your father's mind was slipping. He was losing control of everything. His empire, his reputation, his very self. And I couldn't let that happen. Not after everything we had worked for. I took a step back, trying to process everything she was saying. For years, Claire had been the cold, calculating woman in the background, pulling the strings and keeping everyone around her in check. But now, I was beginning to understand just how far she was willing to go to keep her grip on power. You didn't just love him, Claire, I said softly. You wanted to own him. You wanted to control everything. And when he started to slip away from you, you made sure he had no choice but to trust you. Claire's gaze hardened, her lips curling into a thin, cold smile. Yes, Emily, that's exactly what I did. And it's what I've always done. I protected him, and I protected the family. I kept everything running smoothly while you were off living your life, doing whatever you wanted. I shook my head in disbelief. You destroyed our family, Claire. You manipulated everything and everyone. And now you're trying to take away what little I have left of my father. You can't just erase all of it. Her expression softened for a split second, almost as if she were regretting her words. But then, just as quickly, it turned back to ice. I'm not erasing anything, Emily. I'm making sure that what we built lasts, that the legacy of this family continues. And if that means sacrificing one person, then so be it. Your father understood that. I just wish you did too. My heart was racing as I processed everything she had just confessed. It wasn't just about money or power. It was about control. Claire had been willing to tear apart her family, to sacrifice anyone in her path, all to maintain the life she had created with my father. And now, she was doing everything in her power to make sure I would never be able to take it back. But I wasn't going to let her win. I couldn't. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. I had one card left to play, and I was going to make it count. I needed proof. I needed something that would expose Claire for the woman she really was, the manipulator, the liar, the destroyer of families. I'm done with this, I said, my voice unwavering. You can keep your lies, your games, and your power, Claire, but I'm going to make sure everyone knows who you really are. Claire raised an eyebrow, a dangerous gleam in her eye. You think you can take me down, Emily? You think you can expose me? She sneered. You're playing a dangerous game. You're far out of your depths, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had come this far, and I wouldn't back down now. I looked at Claire one last time, my resolve hardening. No, Claire, you're the one who's playing a dangerous game. I walked out of the room, my heart pounding, knowing that this was only the beginning. I had the evidence, and now it was time to turn the tables. The truth was coming, whether Claire liked it or not. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, research, and endless nights spent sifting through every document, every file, and every memory I could find about Claire and my father. I had gathered all the evidence I could, piecing together fragments of the past, hoping to expose Claire for the manipulative woman she truly was. But each new discovery only made the situation more complex. I wasn't just fighting for my inheritance anymore. I was fighting for my father's memory and his legacy, something Claire had tried so desperately to erase. The weight of what I was about to do settled heavily on my shoulders. I wasn't just up against Claire's manipulation. I was up against years of deceit, a life of lies carefully crafted to protect her. And I had the truth, proof of everything she had done, but even with that, I knew there would be consequences. Claire wouldn't go down without a fight, and that fight, I knew, would be brutal. I took a deep breath as I sat in front of my laptop, the screen glowing with the pages of the old contracts I had uncovered. I had found something, a series of emails exchanged between Claire and a lawyer that confirmed everything I suspected. Claire had been orchestrating the transfer of my father's assets long before he passed away. She had manipulated him into changing his will, using guilt, control, and emotional blackmail to keep him under her thumb. I pulled out the copy of the letter my father had written to me, the one where he warned me about Claire. It was still hard to read, still painful to think about, but it also gave me the clarity I needed. He had known the truth all along, even when it was too late to change things. Now, it was up to me to finish what he had started. I clicked open the email thread between Claire and the lawyer. The lawyer, an old family friend of my father's, had been complicit in her schemes. The emails were clear. Claire had been plotting to keep control of the estate by any means necessary. The final message was the one that made my blood run cold. In it, Claire had promised to make sure that my inheritance would be disposed of properly. She knew I would never accept her control over everything, so she had made plans to dispose of my share without my knowledge. I felt a surge of anger rise in me. This wasn't just about money or power anymore. This was about Claire erasing me from my own family's legacy. She had stolen everything from me. She had manipulated the very people who were supposed to protect me. I saved the emails and sent them to my lawyer, who had been waiting for my next move. But before I could make any further plans, a sudden knock on my door jolted me from my thoughts. I opened it to find Ava standing there, her face grim. "You look like you've seen a ghost," I said, trying to mask the worry that crept into my voice. Ava stepped inside without saying a word, her eyes flickering to the stack of papers on the table. She glanced back at me, a serious expression on her face. "I've been hearing things, Emily," she said quietly. "There are rumors going around that Claire's getting desperate. She's making threats against you." I froze, the words sinking in. "What do you mean, threats?" My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to stay calm. "I'm not sure, but I heard her talking to some people. She's preparing for something," Ava replied, lowering her voice. "She knows you're getting close, and she won't let you ruin her plans. If you push her too far, she's not just going to try and shut you down. She'll make sure you regret it." I didn't know what to say. I had expected Claire to retaliate, but hearing Ava's words made everything seem so much more real. Claire wasn't just a woman with power, she was dangerous. And she wouldn't hesitate to destroy me if it meant protecting her empire. I closed my eyes, trying to think clearly. I knew I couldn't back down now. Too much was at stake, my father's legacy, the truth, my future. But I also knew I had to be careful. Claire wouldn't play fair, and neither could I. "Thank you for telling me," I said after a long pause, meeting Ava's gaze. "I know what I have to do next." "What are you going to do?" Ava asked, her voice full of concern. "I'm going to take Claire down once and for all. I'm going to expose her for what she really is, and I'm going to make sure she can't do this to anyone else," I said, my voice hardening with resolve. "I'm not going to let her destroy my family any longer." Ava nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "I'll help you however I can, Emily. You're not alone in this." With Ava's support, I felt the last shred of doubt leave me. Claire might be powerful, but she wasn't invincible. I had the truth, and that was a weapon stronger than any of her lies. The time for playing games was over. I was going to take the fight to Claire, and I would not rest until she was held accountable for everything she had done. The next day, I contacted my lawyer again, instructing him to prepare everything for a formal legal challenge. I was going to force Claire's hand, make her answer for her actions in front of the law. But I needed more than just evidence. I needed leverage, and I knew where to find it. I had learned that Claire had been working with a network of powerful individuals to keep my father's empire under her control. If I could expose those connections, I could destroy her entire operation. It wasn't just about getting back what was mine. It was about bringing her world down, piece by piece. As I prepared for the final confrontation, the weight of what I was about to do settled heavily on me. This was no longer just about me and Claire. This was about something much bigger, about standing up to corruption, to control, and to the lies that had destroyed my family. I was ready to face whatever came next, and whatever it took, I would make sure the truth won, even if it meant paying the ultimate price. The days that followed were a blur of relentless preparation. I knew what had to be done. I had the evidence, clear and undeniable, that Claire had manipulated my father, had orchestrated his decisions for years, all while hiding her true motives. But even with that, I couldn't afford to rush. If I made one wrong move, if I didn't approach this carefully, I could lose everything. And the stakes were too high now. Ava was by my side every step of the way, offering her unwavering support. But as the days wore on, I could sense the weight of the situation pressing on her too. She could see how much I was sacrificing, how deeply this fight was consuming me. The anger, the hurt, the desire for revenge, it all blended together, creating a toxic brew inside me. It was hard to separate my emotions from the strategy, and it was getting harder to control them. I had the legal case in motion, and I had reached out to a few trusted friends who had connections in the media. I was going to expose Claire to the public, force her to face the consequences of her actions. The thought of seeing her brought low, of watching her empire crumble, gave me some sense of satisfaction, but it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted her to feel the weight of every lie she had told, every soul she had destroyed in her pursuit of control. The moment of reckoning came sooner than I expected. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I received the call from my lawyer. He had set up a meeting with the prosecutor handling the case, and everything was finally in place. We had the evidence, we had the witnesses, and now all we needed was for Claire to fall into our trap. But as I sat in my office, staring at the papers in front of me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was forgetting something important. It was like there was a piece of the puzzle missing, something that could change everything. That evening, Ava and I met at a local cafe, the dim lighting and quiet atmosphere a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts swirling in my head. We sat in the corner, away from prying eyes, and I placed the documents in front of her. "What's going on, Em?" Ava asked, her voice softer than usual. "You seem distant, like there's something else on your mind." I rubbed my temples, trying to shake off the growing sense of dread. "I don't know, Ava. Something's not right. Claire's too calm. She's not panicking. She should be. She's got everything to lose." Ava frowned. "Maybe she's just good at hiding it. You've seen how she operates. She's always been calculating." "I know," I muttered. "But this doesn't feel like her usual game. She's been planning something bigger than just the inheritance. I can feel it. She's setting a trap, and I'm walking right into it." "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out," I said, my voice hardening with resolve. "I'll go straight to her. I'll force her to make a mistake. I won't let her control this anymore." Ava reached out, placing her hand on mine. "Be careful, Emily. Don't let her pull you into her web again. You're stronger than that." I nodded, but the weight of her words hit harder than I expected. I had been so focused on exposing Claire, on taking her down, that I had almost lost sight of the bigger picture. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my future. The next day, I made a plan. I would confront Claire one last time. It wasn't going to be just about the legal case anymore. It was going to be personal. I needed to see for myself what she was hiding, what she was willing to do to keep her empire intact. I arrived at her estate that afternoon, my heart pounding as I stepped out of the car. This time, I wasn't here to back down. This time, I was going to expose her lies, once and for all. Claire's mansion looked as grand as ever, but it felt like a prison. I walked up to the front door with purpose, my mind set on the confrontation ahead. When the door opened, Claire stood there, as composed as ever, her face a mask of feigned politeness. "Emily," she said, her voice as sweet as honey, but with an edge that I could feel down to my bones. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I'm here for answers, Claire," I said, stepping past her into the hallway. "I'm done waiting. You're going to tell me everything, and I'm not leaving until you do." Claire's smile faltered just for a second, but it quickly returned. She stepped aside, motioning for me to follow her. "You really think you can intimidate me, don't you? After everything we've been through." I didn't answer, not immediately. I was done with games, with trying to pretend that there was some part of her that could be reasoned with. Claire had crossed too many lines. She had taken too much from me, and I was about to make sure she would never get away with it again. We walked into the living room, and Claire gestured for me to sit, but I remained standing, arms crossed. "What are you so afraid of, Emily?" she asked, her tone almost mocking. "You've already won, you have the evidence. You've made your point." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I haven't made my point yet. I'm not leaving until you admit what you've done. Admit how you've manipulated everything, how you've used my father, and how you've been trying to tear apart this family." Claire's expression didn't change, but I saw the faintest flicker of something, a crack in her facade. It was small, but it was there. "You're too late, Emily," she said, her voice tight. "You think you've got the upper hand. You think I'm going to confess. I've already won." I stood there, staring at her. For the first time, I saw the fear in her eyes. It wasn't fear of me, it was fear of losing everything. And I knew in that moment that I had her right where I wanted her. "I'm not leaving until you admit everything," I repeated, my voice calm but firm. Claire's face twisted into a grimace, and for the briefest moment, I thought she might break down. But then her eyes hardened, and she stood up, her movements sharp and deliberate. "You're playing a dangerous game, Emily," she said, her voice cold, "and you're going to regret it." But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had come too far to stop now. Claire might think she had control, but the truth was mine to wield. And when I was done, nothing would ever be the same again. The breaking point had come, and I wasn't going to back down. This fight was far from over. The air in Claire's mansion felt thick, oppressive. The tense silence between us was unbearable, each word I spoke seeming to push her further into a corner. The walls, once a symbol of power and control, now felt like they were closing in around her. She could feel it, too. The truth was inching closer, and no matter how much she tried to deny it, it was too late. The mask she had worn for so long was cracking, and beneath it, I saw the raw fear that she had kept hidden for years. "You really think this is going to end the way you want it to?" Claire's voice was a hiss, barely contained. "You think I'm going to just sit here and let you destroy everything?" I didn't flinch. "I'm not the one destroying things, Claire. You've been doing that for years." My voice was calm, but each word was like a strike of a hammer. "You manipulated my father, you broke our family, and now you think you can get away with it. Not anymore." Claire's face contorted in anger, her perfectly composed facade slipping just enough to show the woman beneath. The woman who had spent her life controlling, lying, and tearing down everyone who stood in her way. "You're a fool, Emily," she spat, stepping closer, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I have resources, I have connections. I can make sure you never see a dime of your inheritance. I can ruin you." Her words were empty threats meant to rattle me, but I wasn't intimidated. I had spent too long living in her shadow, afraid of what she could do. Now, I was standing in the light, and the power had shifted. I was no longer the frightened daughter trying to piece together the remnants of a broken family. I was the one holding the truth, and that truth was my weapon. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," I said firmly, looking her straight in the eyes. "You've spent your life controlling others, but not me, and you won't control me anymore." Claire's lips curled into a bitter smile, but it was clear she was rattled. The power dynamic had shifted, and for the first time in a long while, Claire wasn't in control. The fear in her eyes was palpable, but she was too proud to admit it. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. "You think you can take everything from me. You think you can expose me. You're nothing without me. You'll lose everything." I shook my head, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. "You're wrong, Claire. I'm not losing anything. I'm gaining back my life, my future, my father's legacy. And you, well, you're about to lose everything you've worked so hard to destroy." With that, I pulled out the folder I had been holding. It was thick with documents, contracts, emails, and evidence of Claire's manipulation. I had everything I needed. Everything that would destroy her web of lies. I slid the folder across the table toward her, watching her face as she realized what was inside. The color drained from her face as she recognized the contents. The emails, the lawyer's correspondence, the witnesses who had seen her threats, heard her promises, it was all there. Claire's eyes darted to the folder and then back to me, a flicker of panic flashing across her face before she quickly masked it with cold indifference. "You think this will change anything?" she asked, her voice low. "You think these papers will bring me down?" I leaned in, my voice quiet but filled with certainty. "This isn't just about papers, Claire. This is about the truth, about everything you've done. And the truth is, you can't hide anymore." Her fingers trembled as she reached for the folder, her lips parting slightly in disbelief. She began to flip through the documents, each page seeming to strip away another layer of the life she had carefully constructed. Her control was slipping, and she knew it. I could see the realization in her eyes. She had underestimated me. I didn't need to wait for her to finish. I knew what would happen next. Claire would try to use her connections, try to manipulate the system to her advantage. She would fight back, maybe even use every dirty trick she had up her sleeve. But it didn't matter. The truth had already been set in motion, and there was no stopping it now. Claire looked up at me, the mask of power gone. What replaced it was something I hadn't seen in years: vulnerability. For a moment, she was just a woman, scared of losing everything she had built on lies. "You won't win," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I won't let you take everything from me." I stood up, my heart steady, my mind focused. "You took everything from me long ago, Claire. This is just the beginning of me getting it back." The silence between us was heavy, thick with the weight of everything that had been said. I knew what was coming. I knew she would fight to the bitter end, and I knew that the battle wasn't over. But I had what I needed, and I wasn't going to back down. As I turned to leave, I looked back at her one last time. Her face was pale, her hands shaking, but she said nothing. The game was over, and she knew it. "I'll see you in court, Claire," I said, my voice calm but filled with finality. I left the mansion that day with a sense of relief I hadn't felt in years. The truth was no longer just something I held in my hands, it was something I was about to make the world see. Claire had built her empire on manipulation, on lies, and on control. But now it was all falling apart. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and battles to fight. But for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the one in control. And nothing, not even Claire, could take that away from me. The fight was far from over. But I was ready for whatever came next. The days following my final confrontation with Claire passed in a whirlwind of activity. I had handed over the evidence to my lawyer, and he had begun preparing everything for the upcoming court battle. Every night, I spent hours revisiting the documents, ensuring that the case was airtight. But even as the legal process began, I could feel the weight of the situation pulling me in different directions. There was still a part of me that felt like I was walking on a tightrope. One misstep, and I could fall. Ava had become my anchor, always there to lend support, whether it was to listen to my worries or help me organize the mounting pile of legal paperwork. Despite her usual calm, I could tell she was worried, too. The pressure of taking on Claire was immense, and we both knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. The public had begun to catch wind of the family drama, especially as whispers of Claire's involvement in my father's financial dealings started to leak out. The media, as expected, had latched onto the story with the same frenzy they would any scandal involving power and wealth. But as the pressure mounted, so did my resolve. I wasn't doing this for attention. I was doing it for the truth, for my father, for what had been taken from me, from us. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, going through a new batch of evidence my lawyer had sent over, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. "Emily," a voice said on the other end. It was cold, unmistakable. "Claire," I froze, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you want, Claire?" "I just wanted to let you know that this is far from over," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "You think you're going to win? You think you can destroy everything I've worked for? You're making a huge mistake." I could hear the barely restrained fury behind her words, but I wasn't intimidated. "I'm not the one making a mistake, Claire. This is the truth catching up with you. It's time to pay for what you've done." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, with chilling clarity, Claire spoke again. "You don't know the whole story, Emily. You think you've got it all figured out, that your little pile of documents will take me down. You have no idea what I'm capable of, what I've already set in motion." The words she spoke were cryptic, unsettling, but I wasn't going to let her intimidate me. "I know enough, Claire," I said, my voice firm. "And I'm not backing down. You can't control me anymore." Another silence. Then, almost too calmly, she said, "I'm warning you, Emily. You're playing a game you can't win, and I always win." The line went dead, leaving nothing but the ringing in my ears. I stared at my phone, my breath steadying as I realized what Claire had done. She wasn't just threatening me, she was trying to manipulate me again. To scare me. to make me doubt myself, but I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I had the truth. I had everything I needed to bring her down, and I wasn't going to let her derail me now. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. We went over everything once again, every detail, every angle. I had learned to trust him, but there was a nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. Something about Claire's warning lingered. It was too calm, too calculated. She wasn't just trying to intimidate me, she was trying to throw me off course. "You need to be prepared for everything," my lawyer said as we wrapped up the meeting. "Claire won't go down quietly. She's got power, connections. We'll need to be ready for anything she throws our way." I nodded, my resolve hardening. "I'm ready." As I left the lawyer's office, I found myself standing on the busy street corner, feeling a sense of surreal clarity. This was the moment everything I'd fought for would come to fruition. I had no illusions about how hard the next steps would be, but I was done being afraid. I had been manipulated for far too long, and now I was going to make sure Claire couldn't control me or anyone else ever again. The day of the trial arrived faster than I expected. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation as I sat at the front, facing Claire for the first time since our last confrontation. She was sitting in her usual spot, her expression tight, her eyes cold. But today, she was wearing the face of someone who knew her time was running out, and I could see it. She could feel it. The trial began, and my lawyer presented the evidence methodically, email after email, document after document. Claire's connections, her manipulations, the way she had forced my father's hand, making him change his will, ensuring that she would inherit everything. But as the details of her lies were exposed, Claire's composure began to falter. I could see her shifting in her seat, her fingers trembling slightly, her face betraying the control she had so carefully built. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. But I was no longer the scared daughter who had walked into this battle months ago. I was the woman who had uncovered the truth, the woman who was about to expose the lies that had held me captive for so long. I spoke of my father, the man I had loved and respected. I spoke of the years I had spent questioning why he had changed, why he had begun to trust Claire more than me. I spoke of the betrayal I had felt when I first saw the will, and how I had uncovered the web of lies Claire had spun. Claire's eyes were locked on me the entire time, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She was losing, and I wasn't going to stop until she was held accountable. The courtroom grew silent as my lawyer presented the final piece of evidence, the letter my father had written to me before he died, the letter where he had warned me about Claire, where he had confessed the truth that he couldn't say out loud, the truth that would bring her world crashing down. I turned to Claire one last time, my voice steady but fierce. "You thought you could control everything, Claire, but you didn't count on the truth." Claire's face twisted, her eyes narrowing with fury. She knew it was over. She knew she had lost. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about the inheritance. This wasn't even just about Claire. It was about reclaiming my own life, about no longer being afraid, about finally taking control of the narrative. The past could never be undone, but it didn't have to define me. I had one. And Claire, at long last, was defeated. The gavel came down and the courtroom erupted in whispers. The case was closed. The truth had prevailed. But as I left the courthouse, I knew this wasn't the end. The real journey had just begun, and I was ready for whatever came next. The days following the trial passed in a blur of emotions. The courtroom drama was over, but the weight of what I had just achieved still lingered heavily in the air. Claire's empire of lies had crumbled, and with it, she had lost everything she had worked so hard to control. The judge's ruling had been clear, and the media had already begun picking apart the story, exposing Claire's manipulations to the world. Her reputation was in tatters, her future uncertain. But for me, it wasn't just about the victory, it was about the closure. The freedom, the chance to finally move forward. I stood in front of my father's grave that afternoon, the wind softly rustling through the trees around me. The sky was clear, the sun casting a gentle light over the cemetery. It felt almost like he was there with me, watching as I took the final steps in reclaiming what was rightfully mine. "I did it, Dad," I whispered, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's over. The truth's out. You don't have to carry this anymore. And neither do I." There was no response, of course, but in the quiet solitude of the cemetery, I felt a peace I had never known before. For so long, I had been fighting not just for justice, but for a sense of closure. For a way to let go of the pain of betrayal and rebuild my life. Now it was finally happening. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting in my new office. It wasn't the mansion that Claire had controlled or the life she had manipulated. It was mine, my own space. A place where I could begin the next chapter of my life, not defined by the past, but by what I chose to make of the future. The walls were bare for now, but I had plans. Big plans. Ava was standing by my desk, a huge grin on her face as she handed me a coffee. "I can't believe it, Em. You actually did it. You took her down." I smiled back at her, feeling the weight of everything lift off my shoulders. It's hard to believe, honestly, but yeah, I did. She sat down across from me, her smile fading slightly. "So, what now? What do you want to do next?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out of the window at the city below. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the skyline. For the first time in a long time, I felt hope, a sense of possibility that I hadn't felt in years. "I think it's time to rebuild," I said softly, "to make something of my own. Not for anyone else, just for me." Ava raised an eyebrow. "You're not going to let this whole mess stop you, are you?" I shook my head. "No, I'm done being afraid of the past. I've learned too much, lost too much, to let it control me any longer." Claire thought she could take everything from me, but what she didn't realize is that she only gave me the strength to rebuild. I'm going to take control of my life again, and I'm going to make it exactly what I want. Ava's smile returned. "I like the sound of that, so what's the first step?" I thought about it for a moment before responding. "The first step is taking what I've learned from all of this and using it to help others. I want to build something meaningful, something that gives people a voice, a chance to stand up for themselves when they're up against people like Claire. I'm not going to let her be the only one who gets to manipulate people. I'm going to help them fight back." Ava's eyes widened in excitement. "You're really going to do it, aren't you?" "I am," I said, my voice filled with certainty. "I'm going to build a foundation, one that helps people who are stuck in toxic, manipulative situations, people who need help breaking free. And I'm going to make sure they have the tools and resources they need to take their lives back, just like I did." It was a big vision, but it was the vision that felt right. It wasn't just about money or success anymore. It was about making a difference, about giving people the chance to fight for themselves, the way I had fought for my father's legacy. Claire had tried to take everything from me, but what she didn't understand was that I wasn't just fighting for money or power. I was fighting for my life, for my identity, for everything I had lost. And now I was rebuilding it all, one step at a time. Months passed, and the foundation I'd dreamed of began to take shape. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I doubted myself. But with Ava by my side, I pushed forward, determined to make a difference. I reached out to people who had been through similar experiences, who had been manipulated, controlled, and betrayed. And slowly, we began to build a network of support. A community of people who understood what it meant to fight back and take control of their own lives. Through it all, I had the satisfaction of knowing that Claire's power had dwindled, her grip on everything she had stolen slipping away. The legal battles continued, but with every document filed, every piece of evidence revealed, I knew we were closer to seeing justice. Claire would have to answer for her actions, but even as I watched her world continue to fall apart, I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt peace. I had found my purpose, and it wasn't about revenge. It was about giving others the same chance I had to rebuild, to reclaim what was lost, and to live a life free from fear and manipulation. As I looked at the people I was helping, as I saw the change I was creating, I realized something important. This wasn't just the end of my story. It was the beginning of something much bigger. And this time, I was in control. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. The future was mine to shape, and I was ready for whatever came next.